Hey, welcome to Q&A, where you ask your questions on faith and life, and I do my best to give a biblical perspective. Well, let's jump into today's question. Let me bring it up here. Why is Christianity declining in Western culture but increasing overall? What differences between the West and other countries contribute to this trend? That's a good question. That's a big question. And I'm not sure that I can answer both parts of this question adequately in the context of Q&A in one session. So let me just focus on the first part. And if this is your question, you want to ask the second part, feel free to repost that part. You're right. Christianity is in decline in Western culture. Whatever metric you want to use, whether it be church attendance, and I know some churches, some movements are growing, but others are declining, and the decline outstrips the growth overall, or whether it be through census figures where people are choosing not to identify as Christian, the church in the West is in decline. I think there's a number of reasons for that. There's a lot of reasons for it. Let me just highlight some which I think are significant. The first, for example, and this isn't an order of importance, but in terms of what comes to mind, is the fact that the generation entering into adulthood today, people in their 20s through to early 30s, for example, are children of parents themselves who had weaker or little religious conviction compared to that of their parents. And as a consequence, I think one of the things we are witnessing is a decline of what I would call cultural Christianity. In other words, people who would attend church because it was the done thing, not necessarily because they believed with any great conviction. And so we're seeing a decline of people who are identifying as Christian because they no longer see the need to attend the way their parents may have done, or the need to identify as their parents may have done. So that's one of the factors. I think another factor is the cultural and philosophical shifts that within wider society that mean that the church is no longer seen as significant in terms of things like ethics and values, whereas there was a time when if we wanted to know where the moral boundaries were, we would, for example, turn to the church. The shifts within society have seen that shift, and people no longer look to the church to determine what's right, what's wrong. We look to other places, and as a consequence, that has had an impact on the way that people identify or relate to the church or to Christianity, and so they no longer identify. I think another significant reason that should not be dismissed in terms of why people are walking away from the church, not identifying as Christians, is the erosion of trust in institutions as general, and in particular the church. There's no question that erosion in institutions is a growing thing. People don't trust institutions the way they once did. There's an inherent suspicion of them. But we see that particularly in terms of the church, where historic sexual abuse is now being revealed, and people are being held to account. And these things, there's no excuse, there's no justification, but because of the way they'd been swept under the carpet for so long and covered up, people are rightly angry, upset, and they're very suspicious and have no trust. I think also we see outside of that particular issue, which unfortunately is been associated particularly with the Catholic Church, but not exclusively, also within other mainline churches, we've seen the uncovering of abuses of power, of abuses of finance, abuses of people. And as these things have surfaced, again, it's served to undermine people's trust in the church. And so there's a whole lot of factors that are attributable to the decline of Christianity in the West. And the reason I just raise these, and there's many more I could raise, is that what I think we need to be aware of is some of the social things, like the ones I've just mentioned, that are contributing to it, so that we can engage with them. But we shouldn't see them as the sole reason for it. I think we've got to look elsewhere. And the reason I say that is that in Matthew 7, about verse 17 to 19, somewhere around there, Jesus talks about how a good tree produces good fruit and a bad tree produces bad fruit. So every tree that doesn't produce good fruit will be chopped down and thrown into the fire. In other words, he's saying that if something's healthy, it's going to grow, and if it's not healthy, it'll die. And in fact, if it's not healthy, and he's in regards to the church, I will make sure that it's taken out and thrown away. So I think that when we look around the West and we look around the decline of Christianity, we can't ignore some of the external factors so that we can engage with them and recover the confidence, build confidence between people and the church, etc. However, let's not ignore the internal dynamics. Let's not look. Let's look at ourselves. Are we living our faith in ways that are credible, ways that are healthy? And do we live our faith in ways that invite comparison between the emotional and spiritual overall well-being of our lives compared to others? In the midst of the social dislocation that people are experiencing, the division, all of the things that create anxiety and fear and put people against each other, it is something about the way that we live and the way that we talk that invites inspection, that invites comparison, that says to people, you know what, that's how I want my life to be. I don't want to feel anxious. I don't want to be caught up in the divisiveness of the world today. I want hope. I want to experience a joy and a peace that's not determined by my circumstances. I want a quality for my life that the things that I've tried so far can't offer, that don't offer. I think that we need to ask ourselves, how do we live with a degree of simplicity? How do we live for the sake of others and not ourselves? You see, I think we've politicized our faith increasingly in the West, and we have tended to get very moralistic. And hear me on this. There are moral boundaries. No question of that. The scriptures are very, very clear that there are moral boundaries. But we've sought to politicize those in ways that have pushed people away. And as a consequence, in the way that we've done that, I think we've become, again, unhealthy. And so we're not producing good fruit. We're not growing. Another thing we could ask ourselves is, how are we engaging with the Great Commission? For so long, the church waited for people to come to it in order to grow. Now we need to go into the world and to be as Christ, to engage people. How do we do that? We wait for them to initiate conversations. No, let's initiate conversations. Let's learn to engage people with hope. Let's learn to engage people with the gospel of grace in ways that capture people's imagination for their lives of what can be, that invites them into a relationship with Jesus. You see, if we don't look at these types of things, if we don't look at ourselves, then we'll never be healthy. And if we're not healthy, we're not going to grow. And so we need to examine ourselves and see where we need to make changes. Instead of just looking out and saying, woe is the church, look at people, they're turning away. Say, why are people turning away? And what can we take responsibility for? What can we fix? And then look at the external factors and say, well, in the light of that, what's a better way of engaging these people in order to help them look beyond institutions, beyond what they've known in the past to Jesus Christ, who alone is the hope that the world needs and that their hearts are longing for. So that way we can draw people to a living faith in Jesus Christ. So that's to me the crux of the issue, is not simply that the church is in decline because there's a growing gap between the philosophies of this world and the church, but it's because we're not as healthy as we need to be. Healthy things grow. And if we're part of the kingdom will grow. The kingdom will come on earth as it is in heaven if we're healthy and live out of it in ways that nurture it and allow it to prosper. But if we're just going to keep on doing what we've done, if we're going to live in ways that undermine the works of God and the things of his kingdom in our midst, then no, it's not going to grow, and we're going to see a continual decline. So yeah, in a nutshell, in a very high level overview, that's how I see the ground and the nature of the context for this question. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Why not post them? But hey, if you've got questions on faith and life, jump over to slido.com, use the hashtag askhamish. Love to hear from you. But that's it for now. Until next time, God bless.